In a secluded region lay the Eldritch Woods, a forest so ancient and dense that locals spoke of it only in whispers. It was said that the woods were alive, guarding secrets no human was meant to uncover. Julia, a writer with a fascination for the macabre, was drawn to the lore surrounding Eldritch Woods. Driven by a desire to gather material for her next horror novel, she decided to explore the woods alone at night, underestimating the dangers that lay within. As Julia entered the forest, the canopy overhead blotted out the moon, enveloping her in darkness. Her flashlight was a feeble beacon in the oppressive blackness of the woods. The air was thick, heavy with an earthy, rotting scent, and every step seemed to be watched by unseen eyes. The deeper Julia ventured, the more the forest seemed to change. The trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their branches entangling like the arms of the dead. The path disappeared, replaced by a labyrinth of thorns and brambles that seemed to move, guiding her further into the darkness. Whispers echoed through the trees, voices that were neither human nor animal. They spoke in a language she couldn't understand, yet the words filled her with an inexplicable dread. Shadows flitted at the edge of her vision, always just out of sight, and she felt the presence of something ancient and malevolent observing her every move. As Julia pressed on, she stumbled upon a clearing where the ground was littered with bones and remnants of clothing. In the center stood an altar made of stone, covered in carvings so old they were nearly eroded away. The air around the altar was colder, and the whispers grew louder, urging her closer. When she touched the altar, the forest erupted into a cacophony of shrieks and howls. The ground beneath her trembled, and from the earth emerged grotesque, twisted figures, the corrupted souls of those who had been consumed by the woods. They circled Julia, their eyes hollow pits of despair, their mouths gaping in silent screams. She realized then that the Eldritch Woods were a sentient entity, a devourer of souls, luring the unwary into its depths to feed on their fear and despair. In a moment of terrifying clarity, Julia understood that her fascination had led her into a trap. The forest was not just a setting for her stories, it was a living, breathing horror, and she was its latest victim. The creatures closed in, their touch cold and suffocating. Julia fought with every ounce of her strength, her screams echoing through the night. As she struggled, the very essence of her being began to slip away, her memories, her fears, her identity consumed by the ravenous woods. In a final, desperate act, she used her own blood to scrawl a warning on the altar, a message to any who might follow in her footsteps. With the last of her strength, she broke free from the creature's grasp and fled. Julia emerged from the Eldritch Woods as the first light of dawn broke the horizon. She was a shell of her former self, her mind fractured by the horrors she had witnessed. The forest had released her, but it had taken something essential, leaving her a living warning of the dangers that lurked within its dark embrace. The Eldritch Woods remain, a sinister sentinel in the night, its whispers carried on the wind. To those who listen, they tell a tale of a writer who sought the heart of darkness and found it waiting for her, eager to embrace another soul.
Now the second story.
In the remote reaches of the world, there lay a forest so dense and dark that sunlight never touched its floor. Known as Gloomwood, it was a place of nightmares, where time seemed to stand still and the air was thick with an unspoken dread. The locals avoided it, whispering tales of those who entered and never returned. Despite the warnings, a group of 4 friends, driven by a mix of curiosity and bravado, decided to explore Gloomwood. They were Alex, a natural leader, Mia, with her keen intuition, Ryan, the skeptic, and Zoe, who was fascinated by the supernatural. As they ventured into the forest, a thick fog descended, obscuring their path and disorienting them. The trees seemed to close in, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky. Unnatural sounds echoed through the woods, distant howls, whispers, and an unsettling laughter that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. The group stumbled upon an old, decrepit cabin, half swallowed by the forest. Inside, they found remnants of a ritual, a circle of stones, strange symbols on the walls, and a book with pages filled with ominous incantations. It was as if the cabin was frozen in time, awaiting the return of its owner. As night fell, the true horror of Gloomwood began to reveal itself. Shadows moved with a life of their own, and ghostly apparitions flickered in and out of existence. The group realized they were not alone. Something was watching them, hunting them. The forest seemed to warp and change around them, leading them in circles. Attempts to leave were futile, as if Gloomwood itself wanted to keep them trapped. Alex tried to keep everyone calm, but fear and paranoia set in. Mia felt an overwhelming sense of dread, her intuition warning her of an unspeakable evil at the heart of the forest. Ryan, in a moment of panic, ran off into the darkness, only to be consumed by a shadowy figure, his screams echoing through the night. The group was terrorized, realizing the legends were true. Gloomwood was alive, and it hungered for their souls. Zoe, through the ancient book, discovered that the forest was cursed by a malevolent entity, a being that fed on fear and suffering. The only way to escape was to confront the entity and break the curse. As they journeyed deeper into the heart of Gloomwood, the forest grew more oppressive, the air heavy with the scent of decay. They encountered twisted creatures, malformed and grotesque, remnants of those consumed by the forest. Finally, they reached a clearing where the entity resided, a swirling vortex of darkness, its form constantly shifting, faces of its victims appearing and disappearing within it. The entity spoke in a voice that chilled their bones, offering them a place in its eternal torment. With courage they didn't know they had, Alex, Mia, and Zoe performed the ritual from the book, each step a battle against their own fears. The entity unleashed its fury upon them, the forest convulsing in a maelstrom of chaos. In a final act of defiance, they completed the ritual, the book bursting into flames. A blinding light engulfed the clearing, the entity letting out a deafening screech as it was torn apart, its hold on Gloomwood broken. The forest transformed before their eyes, the darkness receding, and for the first time in centuries, sunlight pierced through the canopy. Gloomwood was free, but the cost was high. Ryan was lost, and the survivors were forever marked by their ordeal. They emerged from the forest, their story a chilling testament to the horrors that lurk in the unexplored corners of the world. Gloomwood was now just another forest, but for those who knew its history, it would always be a place of terror and awe, a reminder of the thin veil between our world and the darkness that lies beyond.
Now the third story.
In the forgotten reaches of the world, there existed a forest known as the Sable Woods, a place so shrouded in darkness that it was said to consume the light. Legends told of an ancient evil residing within, a malevolent force that preyed upon the souls of the unwary. Lucas, a seasoned hiker with a thirst for adventure, dismissed these tales as mere superstitions. He set out to traverse the Sable Woods one fateful night, seeking to debunk the myths and prove his bravery. As Lucas entered the forest, the atmosphere shifted palpably. The trees, gnarled and towering, seemed to move, their branches clawing at the sky like twisted hands. A thick mist rose from the ground, obscuring his path and muffling the sounds of the forest, creating an eerie silence. Despite his experience, Lucas soon found himself lost, the familiar landmarks disappearing behind veils of fog. The darkness was oppressive, an inky blackness that his flashlight could barely penetrate. It was as if the forest was alive, its shadows dancing and writhing around him. Unnerving sounds began to fill the air, whispers that seemed to come from the trees themselves, and a low, guttural growling that followed him, always just out of sight. He felt eyes upon him, watching from the darkness, filled with hunger and malice. As Lucas pressed on, desperate to find a way out, he stumbled upon a clearing. In its center stood an ancient, decrepit tree, its bark blackened and its limbs bare. Tied to the tree were countless tokens, photographs, pieces of clothing, and trinkets, each seemingly belonging to someone who had ventured into the woods and never returned. The whispers grew louder, converging into a singular, chilling voice that spoke directly into Lucas's mind. It revealed itself as the guardian of the Sable Woods, an entity that existed between the realms of the living and the dead. It fed on fear, luring travelers into the woods to claim their souls. Lucas realized with horror that the Sable Woods were a gateway to something far more sinister, a void beyond the realm of human understanding, a place of eternal darkness. The Guardian was its keeper, and it sought to trap Lucas within its depths. In a terrifying chase through the shifting forest, Lucas was pursued by the Guardian and its minions, shadowy figures that emerged from the trees, their forms twisted and ethereal. The forest itself seemed to conspire against him, the trees bending and the ground shifting to impede his escape. With his sanity fraying, Lucas fought to stay ahead, driven by a primal instinct to survive. He encountered remnants of those who had come before him, their spirits trapped in eternal torment, warning him of the fate that awaited him if captured. In a final, desperate bid for freedom, Lucas reached the edge of the woods as dawn broke. The Guardian, unable to fall into the light, let out a piercing, otherworldly scream, its promise echoing in Lucas's mind. It would always wait for his return. Lucas emerged from the Sable Woods a changed man, haunted by what he had experienced. He spoke little of his ordeal, knowing that words could not convey the true horror of the void beyond the trees. The sable woods continue to stand, a dark monument to the unknown terrors that lurk in the shadows of our world. And for those who listen closely, the whispers still carry on the wind, a siren call to the unwary, inviting them to discover the secrets that lie within the heart of darkness.
Now the fourth story.
Deep in the heart of the Blackwood Forest, a dense and ancient woodland, lay a path seldom traveled, known to locals as the Whispering Way. Legends spoke of strange occurrences and ghostly apparitions haunting those who dared to walk its shadowed trails. Ella, a curious and intrepid explorer, was drawn to these legends. She decided to venture into Blackwood Forest one autumn evening, her heart set on uncovering the truth behind the tales. With only a flashlight and a backpack, she stepped onto the Whispering Way as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows among the gnarled trees. As night enveloped the forest, an unsettling silence fell. The only sounds were Ella's footsteps and the occasional rustle of leaves. She noticed strange markings etched into the bark of the trees, symbols that seemed ancient and otherworldly. A feeling of being watched crept over her, but she pressed on, determined to reach the heart of the forest. The deeper she went, the more the forest seemed to change. The trees grew denser, their branches intertwining like skeletal hands. The air grew colder, and a thick mist began to rise, obscuring her path. Ella's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced among the trees. Suddenly, she heard a soft whisper, a voice that seemed both far away and uncomfortably close. It called her name, beckoning her deeper into the forest. The voice was hypnotic, luring her off the path and into the unknown. Ella found herself in a clearing where the moonlight filtered through the branches, illuminating an ancient stone altar at the center. The whispers grew louder, now a chorus of voices speaking in a language she couldn't understand. Around the altar, ghostly figures appeared, their forms shifting and translucent, their faces filled with sorrow. The spirits spoke of a centuries-old curse that bound them to the forest. They were the souls of travelers who had wandered into Blackwood, ensnared by the forest's malevolent spirit. This entity, a dark and ancient force, fed on the fear and despair of those it captured. Realizing the danger, Ella tried to flee, but the forest seemed to close in around her, the trees shifting to block her path. The entity revealed itself, a massive, shadowy figure with eyes like burning coals, its voice a cacophony of screams and whispers. Ella understood she was facing an ancient evil, one that had claimed countless souls. Her only hope was to break the curse. Drawing on her knowledge of folklore and the cryptic clues provided by the spirits, she deciphered the ritual needed to banish the entity. The forest erupted into chaos as Ella performed the ritual. The entity fought back with all its malevolent power, the air filled with the howls of the wind and the anguished cries of the trapped spirits. Ella chanted the ancient words, her voice steady despite the terror that gripped her heart. As the ritual reached its climax, a blinding light engulfed the clearing. The entity let out a final, earth-shaking scream before dissolving into the light, its hold on the forest broken. The spirits, released from their torment, ascended into the night sky, their whispers of gratitude feeding into the wind. Exhausted but alive, Ella emerged from Blackwood Forest as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. She had faced the darkness of the whispering woods and survived, her tale a testament to the enduring power of courage and determination. The forest was changed, no longer a place of shadows and fear. The Whispering Way became just another woodland path, its legends now a part of history. But Ella would always remember her night in Blackwood Forest, a night when she stared into the abyss and triumphed over the darkness.